Hi, Ben.
Hi, Carl. Are we going to try to stop laughing? Is that going to happen? It's never happening.
No, I'm trying to stop. It's just
It's
I
too
just
silly.
love seeing your face.
Aw.
And there's there's a level of like just genuinely enjoying being with somebody, and then there's another level when you're just both equally goobers in a moment. There's something special about that, and I love how we get to share that every week.
Yeah. It's really like letting go and just feeling like ourselves in front of one another.
Yeah,
I would love it.
yeah, me too.
Awesome. Well, this is good. Going good, I guess, for new co-hosts on a podcast.
Yeah, you don't hate me yet. That's good.
No, not yet.
Plenty of time.
Plenty of time. Amazing. Well, so Carl, today we were going to talk about defining success for ourselves
Oh, yes.
and,
Yes.
or defining success, generally speaking, in the music industry, as audio engineers, as mixers. Yeah, I feel like this is something that I think about a lot. I imagine you're thinking about a lot because we could be spending our time doing a lot of things, yet we spend our time doing the things that we're doing in audio. Tell me, Carl, I guess, should we walk through like a journey of where we are now? Or should we start with where we are now and maybe different places we were in the past or maybe different places we might be in the future? I don't know. What do you think about that as like
That's
a
a
way to navigate this episode?
that's a big question. Um, I don't know. I guess what I think the reason behind that question is the fact that you and I both have had varying perceptions of what success meant, various definitions of what success means to us, and that has evolved over time. So I think, yeah, maybe starting, the first back to the first times that we remember having a perception of what success meant, and maybe go let's start as in childhood, and then maybe like high school, college, after kids.
Yeah.
We could ping pong it back and forth, maybe.
I feel like there's so much in between college and kids, but yeah. Okay. I think my first definition of success was probably at some point between high school and beginning of college of just like wanting to do music as much as possible. So if I was in a band and I was making music, then that was successful. If I was getting to play bass, you know, when you have like I don't know, I've had like depressive thoughts. Not that I haven't really struggled with depression, but like, in when you're a teenager and you're filled with like lots of feelings and hormones and all kinds of things, and sometimes you just think, oh, life is so terrible. I always would think, at least I have music, and music was always this like source of light and inspiration. So I think I always told myself like, as long as I have music, I'll be all right, And so just doing music at one point, I guess early on, was successful for me. That would probably be the first stage, as I'm getting obsessed with music, as I'm learning to play bass, as I'm getting into bands and stuff. How about you?
That's awesome. I'm jealous of that, actually, because I think my first my first perception of what success meant, I think, was being famous.
Really?
It wasn't necessarily that, something that I sought out. It wasn't like it wasn't that, being successful for me meant being famous, but I think, this would be early to mid 90s. I grew up in a small town where there were no, musicians or the arts, or really of any sort. Like that, there was no music scene, no art scene. I mean, we had probably more cows than people, where I grew up. So the only music the only music like outside of school concert band and stuff that I was even aware of is I knew that there was one bar in the town, and the weekends sometimes they had like cover bands. Like I never went to go. I mean, I was in middle school. I didn't like go to the bar to see cover bands. I just knew that that was a thing. But that, to me, that was like the limit. I think it was either you play at a local bar or you are, doing the Super Bowl halftime show. and I didn't have any perception of like anything in between. I had no idea what the actual industry was like. I didn't realize, oh, audio is a thing.
Yeah.
I just didn't clock that.
No.
So I thought really it was either going to be being famous in like a rock band or playing in a major symphony orchestra or something like that. Like that was what I thought success meant. And neither of them really felt like something that I wanted.
Hmm.
And I think that was where I struggled. What I thought success meant in the industry, my very, 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 very minimal, obscured view of it, that it didn't really call to me. And I think that's why it took me a while to really start pursuing music more seriously, because I just didn't think that there were any paths. I just
Hmm.
didn't know they existed. I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, like when you all you see are like the heavy hitters, uh, or the local dive bar or whatever, then you think there's like yeah, that seems super intimidating to try to like get to the upper echelon of the music business. I mean, I have memories of like watching like that Led Zeppelin DVD that came out when I was in high school and being like, I just want to be those guys, like on the stage rocking out. Um,
Yeah, for me it was the Incubus. I think it was Morning View Sessions. I forget what it was, but there was a DVD that came out that was like a uh, live with like in a small like room with an audience kind of thing. And I just
ooh,
remember
that's
being like,
like
oh,
Snarky Puppy before Snarky Puppy kind of thing.
yes, yes, like that kind of vibe.
Hmm.
Yeah, and like that was the first time I was like, okay, maybe there's an in between. But even then, Incubus at the time was huge.
Yeah,
So
humongous.
yeah, they were humongous, fungus among us. Um, that was bad. If you know Incubus, that was real. If you don't know Incubus, that was bad. If you do know Incubus, that was really really bad. Um, but yeah, there's but that I don't know where I was going with that.
But basically,
Except
there
that
was you had like this picture of success when you were like a teenager that was just like stratospheric. That was just like basically unattainable except for a select few, and you basically were inhibited by to try to pursue music because that just seemed unattainable to you.
yeah, it just seemed like not. It wasn't. It didn't seem too difficult. It didn't like it wasn't a. It didn't seem insurmountable. It just seemed like not a not a thing.
Right.
Like not even a rational option.
Yeah. I had a moment that was similar to that, like when we were like checking out colleges and stuff, and so I was in New York, and I remember I went to Juilliard, like the open house at Juilliard. I went with my dad, and I was just like, "There's actually like no way I'm actually going to get into Juilliard." And then like if I do, then I'm going to be playing upright bass jazz, which I'm going to have to really like struggle to learn, and like there's not even like the music that I'm passionate about, and just being like just super impressed with it, but also super intimidated by it, and just kind of realizing this is not going to be my path. That kind of like upper echelon of classical and jazz music. You know what I mean? I just kind of like I had a glimpse at it, and I said like this is just not going to happen. So like I get what you're going for. On the other hand, like I also grew up, you know, in a city, and I don't know, I I saw small venues with bands performing in like high school. You know what I mean? Like I saw those things in Manhattan, and also like in like the local Jewish scene, like sort of like Jewish bands that So I was that kind of allowed me to even play on stage and like kind of get a feeling for that of just like wanting to be on stage and how fun that was to kind of perform in front of an audience. So it was like a totally different experience, being
Yeah.
a city boy.
Yeah, because I mean, my graduating class, it was public school, and the district was like a 10-mile radius, like around where the school was, and I had 96 students in my graduating class. So like very large area, just no people. I think the
And this is
actual
before
town.
like the internet was the
Yeah,
way it is
yeah.
now. you know?
Oh, yeah, because I graduated high school in 2003, so, like, we had the internet, but it wasn't
Yeah, the
the internet
AOL
as we
dial up.
Yeah. I had AIM, it wasn't what it is now. So, yeah, it is so weird thinking too, like, I don't think I even went to New York City until I was probably, my first time in New York, or even in, like, a big city was probably in the middle of college, like, going there to play a gig,
Wow.
like, it was very rural, very, very, very small town, but, like, most small towns would look at my hometown and be like, "Wow, that's like a parking lot with, like, a couple houses around it." Like, that's all that really is. So,
So
yeah, so I
nuts.
it's yeah, contextually, I just like I said, I just had no idea. No idea what I could do. No idea that not even no idea what I could do, but just, being a producer, like, I didn't even know that producers were a thing. That's how out of touch with reality I was. But, when I got to college and I started seeing, okay, well, there are other options. I don't really know what I wanna do, and I think being a session musician was the first thing that I saw as an attainable path that I felt like I could do, or it was I could try, I think that was the thing is before there were no paths that I felt like I could even try, like, not that I would fail at it, I just wouldn't even know where to start. With college and really wanting to become a session player, that was the first time where I thought, "Okay, if I can do that for a living, that's gonna be success for me. If I can find a way to just play drums so that I don't have to have a day job, that's success." It wasn't even a financial goal. It was literally just, am I making music? Yes or no. Am I having to make money doing things besides music? Yes or no. And, like, the answer to
Mm,
those two questions would let me know if I'm successful or not.
amazing. Yeah, so I mean, I think by the time you're in college and I'm in college, our goals seem to coalesce, to collide, in terms of just like, am I doing music? Yes or no? And that's kind of
Yeah.
like the barometer of feeling successful. And yeah, and when I wasn't doing music, I felt things were not as good for me. Like there was like
Yeah.
when music was less of part of my life, then I definitely felt like not as much myself, not my full, not like I was attaining the best version of myself. Like yeah, like after moving to Israel and in different periods of not doing music, I think I felt like I just needed to get out and do music, and only when I was doing music
Yeah.
did I feel more accomplished. You know.
Well, okay, here's a question. When did you know that you were going to be moving to Israel? Like, at what age?
So I moved here at age 22, right after college, and during college I knew I was going to be moving here. I did college in the States, and then I moved here.
So I guess your perception of what success meant was always through like the filter, I guess, of knowing, like, this is where I'm going to be after I graduate. It wasn't like you were
Yeah,
gonna planning on being in the States, and then that the move came up, and then it had to shift to what you thought you were going to be doing. Like, that was kind of already always in
yeah.
the plan.
Yeah, and actually, it's kind of like one of the things I sort of regret was if I'd stayed like one more year in the States and like tried to be in bands in New York while I was already there, that could have been like a fun experience for me. And I just was just so set on getting to Israel that I didn't even think about that stuff. I was just like, let's get to Israel so we could, start a band here or something. So it wasn't even like I didn't even give opportunities that I might have given a better chance, in the States.
Did you know what the music scene was going to be like? What the music industry was going to be like once you moved there?
I really didn't know. And I just had, I had friends here and stuff. So I assumed we would start a band at some point, and that was about as far as I had thought about it. Yeah. I really, I think we're going to get later on into like, current ideas of success and future ideas of success about like, maybe we should probably talk about music cities and how both of us are not in music cities.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I literally didn't think about any of this stuff I just knew I wanted to play music and I wanted to be in Israel, and I had friends here that were musicians, and assumed things would happen, but that was about as far as I saw it, you know?
Yeah. So what was the first event or the first moment that shifted your idea of success away from, just being in a band and making music to, oh, I want to do this professionally. I want to get into the like production and mixing side of it.
Yeah, so for me, when I moved here, and I a bunch of my friends were actually in the army at the time, and I just didn't have anybody to play with, and I was just like itching to do music, is when I sort of got into the production end of things and started recording, and bought my a handy Zoom H4n and started messing around with Logic and stuff like that. And so that kind of was a big for me, a big shift in realizing, like, oh, there's something here that really is calling to me, and I feel like I could do all the time. And so at that point, I don't know if it changed my perception of success, but I was like, I guess that's kind of when I started making a business, so to speak. I was just like, okay, I got to start recording people and charging them, and that was kind of when I guess money came into the picture, of like, oh, I guess if I want to do this, I have to bring in artists to record them, and I'm gonna have to charge them, and I have to start making money somehow. So let's try to advertise and put up posters and find people and stuff. And so I guess at that point, my shift was, I want to be doing music and also recording people. And if I'm doing those things, that's good. I just kind of added another layer to the things that made me feel like I could be successful. Um, yeah. What about you? When did the audio thing start to become a part of your success?
I would say probably the first ideas of it was probably came in like 2014, 2015. While I was still in cheerleader, we were still, touring and doing everything. Um, but that's when I started to experiment with production more and doing. I started by doing a bunch of remixes for friends' bands, but thankfully those friends' bands were like Hippocampus and the Wombats and Saint Lucia and like all these bands that were really big in that scene. So I was getting my hands on really great songs to mess with, and it's a lot harder to screw up a
Hmm.
remix or do a bad remix when the song itself is fantastic. So that was when I started realizing, oh, I could maybe do this too. Like in addition to being a drummer, whether it was if cheerleader kept going at the trajectory that we had been going at, if that would have kept going, then that could have been amazing. Or if it was me just doing more, smaller tours for other bands, or I think for a while my very ridiculous bar for what I thought success would be for me to be at the level of like Josh Freese or Keith
Mm.
Carlock. Like those are the people that I really looked up to and wanted that kind of versatility. And I want like that was the success was like to me, it wasn't just doing it full time. It was going to be like, okay, I want to be making music with phenomenal artists, and I want to be making music with a wide variety of artists. And when I started getting deeper into the production, when it went from, doing remixes for friends' bands to doing it for clients, doing full productions for clients, getting really deep into mixing and really making that transition into focusing on just mixing, then it started to shift and it went less about having somebody else as my, you know, as a goal, like comparing myself to somebody else's success was not as much of a goal. And it was more just like, oh, okay, I'm doing this full time and I'm really enjoying it. And I'm working with more and more people. And I think that's when my first big success or my first big, or I think that's when my next big shift in what success meant went from, being, working full time in music or, doing, drumming full time, whatever. It became, I want to work with as many artists as possible. And that is when things really started ramping up. And this was like maybe 2018, 2019. And then it was like, okay, I'm going to be working on 100 projects a year. and then it was like 180 projects a year, and then when 2020 hit, and it's been like 300 a year, something like that, ever since.
Wow.
And to me, like that has been for the past few years the mark of success for me, where it's that I can find lots and lots of people that trust me and that want to work with me and that allow me to get my hands on their songs. And there were always financial kind of benchmarks, that I think whether we want to have them or not, no matter how like artsy as we try to pretend that we are sometimes, I think that's always a big consideration, especially as kids come into the picture, as mortgages come into the picture, as cold brew habits, cold brew habits come into the picture,
Love it.
um, as furnaces start, crapping out when it's 10 degrees outside, all that. Um, that's always been in the background, but the most recent big shift, well, I guess like up until very recently, the big shift is always. I'm gonna restart that. Sorry, but but yeah, like as of a couple years ago, that definition of success kind of became more focused on. I don't want to say like quantity over quality, because it was actually both. I was very fortunate that I knew that the more people I can work with, the better I'm going to get, and the more quality artists are going to be interested in working with me. But that worked pretty well up until recently, and I've had another shift, I think,
Hmm.
for my perception of success, or my definition of success as it relates to my career, right? Not We can get into like personal, like
Yeah.
family success and stuff in a bit, but I just want to leave it as a little cliffhanger and switch it back to you,
Yeah.
to have you go like, what's the past couple of years,
Yeah.
where has it been for you?
Where's it been for me? So, yeah, I mean, I've been through so many iterations of having a studio and also playing in bands, and right now I'm basically only in the studio. Um, but yeah, I would say like my definitions of success has shifted into slowly becoming more and more audio focused, and also in terms of like the monetary stuff, in terms of like trying to like keep this business alive and sustain my family with it. So I would say as the years have progressed, it's been about whittling down the things I'm doing, I guess. Um, so like, at one point it became adding more things. So I added audio to the band, to like the songwriter and musician guy thing. And then it became sort of like a 50-50 thing for a long time when I was doing studio stuff and also playing in a band. And I formed a co-founded a wedding band, and that was pretty successful, and that took off. And so I'd be like going to gigs at night and then trying to get things going in the studio during the day. And I was kind of like doing both things, and that was really great for a while, until I got married. And that's when things sort of shifted into being like, okay, I can't like work all day and work all night, yeah, all the time. And so I kind of at that point started to think about not working as much at night, and eventually made about in 2016. My wife and we each like, she quit her job on the same day that I told the band that I was like, hey, I don't want to manage this band anymore. So I'm happy to keep playing gigs, but I don't want to be a part of the management. It was taking up too much of my personal headspace. And then we went to Japan for a month. And just kind of like tried to figure out our lives. I remember I read a book in Japan. It was called like the Happiness Project, or something like that. That I was like trying to figure out like what will make me happy. What do I really want? And so I've been kind of like slowly since then sort of like whittling down how much I do gigs, and trying to boost the studio stuff to sort of promote the more family geared end of my life. Um, and then, so I guess that was kind of one definition of success, is try to like do more studio stuff, spend more time with my family. And I think I've just been kind of like razor focused, sort of like trying to like get that balance better and better as the years have moved on since then. in that interim, I ended up doing like some cool touring and playing with an artist named Alex Clare and doing things that kind of checked off some of my like rock star things that I wanted to do. Um, and that kind of stopped with the pandemic, but it got me it got me like to feel at least like I had kind of sort of done the musician stuff kind of checked off in my success registry in my brain.
Yeah.
And since then it's just been about kind of like how can I do work that I enjoy doing the most as often as possible whilst not having while not working all the time and having time also for my family, as you know, we had kids and stuff. And that's becoming even more and more important as the family life takes over, you know.
Yeah,
I'll
and
pass the
continues
baton and continues.
and
Yeah. Yeah, so
continues to grow too.
yeah, thank God. Thankfully. So yeah, how about you? We'll
Oh
go back to
man.
your cliffhanger.
My cliffhanger. Yeah. Ah, man. I went through a very similar sort of transition. I think when I went from drumming and like teaching drums as like the main source of income to, doing like 50-50 production stuff. And then it kind of went from being the drummer, being the musician, being the band guy into being in the studio and really doing almost like in some ways the exact opposite of what I used to do, and in some ways the exact same thing I used to do. Opposite in the sense that I used to be gigging 15, 20 times a month with all sorts of different bands. Like I was a, Philadelphia, mercenary for drums. And now I'm, fully remote. I work mostly from home or from my studio, which is like a 2-minute drive from here. I don't go to gigs anymore, and I don't really miss it if I'm completely honest. But it's very similar, if not the exact same, in the sense that I was working with a bunch of different artists constantly and challenging myself to fully understand not just how to play the drums, but how to really support the vision and intention of the artist, and doing that with a bunch of different artists with very different intentions. And very similarly, that's what I do as a mixing engineer and working with so many different artists. And I think that that challenge of having to think on my feet and having to react to different artistic, musical, creative situations, that's the part that I think drew me to being the session player in the first place. And now, instead of just being the drummer on it, now by being in the studio and being like the mix engineer, additional production guy, it enables me to stretch even further beyond just what, my sticks could do. And so in that sense, is very similar to your story. And I think what shifted most recently for me, and this is something that I had been, it's not that it's a new feeling, it's just that I've been able to put it better into words recently. Although the sentence I just said really was the clunkiest way of saying it. I think there's a beautiful irony in that. No, but I think I've been able to better explain the feeling that I have and the goals that I have. And by, you know, the nature of that, like that's also kind of helping to figure out how to define what success is. But I think before it was success meant making as much music as possible and playing with as many people as possible. And then it kind of shifted into, okay, well, I'm going to mix as many people as possible. I'm going to continue to make as much music as possible, but it's just going to be in mixing because I actually can scale up the number of people that I make music with. And also, reach out geographically a lot more easily than as a drummer. But ultimately, what I started doing when I started coaching people with the like branding strategy and like the outreach and all of like the owning the growing a studio business kind of stuff that I help people with, what I realized was that that's kind of like a multiplier, I think, for what I was able to do. Because before I looked at it as, oh, making music with all these people is what drives me, and whether as a drummer or as a mixing engineer, or whether as a drummer or a mixing engineer. But then what I realized, what really drove me was when I was playing all those gigs as a drummer, it was seeing everybody move in the audience. It was making everybody have a good time. It was uh, emotionally impacting whoever was there that night, right? So whether I was playing for 10 people or I was playing for 1,000 people, I was having an emotional impact on them in that moment.
Yeah.
And the big difference from going from the drumming mercenary to being in the studio is that, well, number one, people can listen to it more than once, and also I could potentially reach a lot more listeners. So it was the idea of working with as many artists as possible wasn't just because I wanted to work with more people. It was because I wanted to emotionally impact more people, and the way to do that was just getting as many opportunities to do that as possible. And I think that's what drew me into really helping other producers and engineers with their business, because if I can help them to do that, if I can help a producer to figure out how to express themselves in a way that their ideal clients become completely they're irresistible to their ideal clients, and they
Mm-hmm.
start getting better projects, and they're making more meaningful art, making more honest art, more authentic art, which is getting heard by more people because it's more genuine,
Mm-hmm.
then I'm able to still have like a bit of like a butterfly effect impact on even more people. It's not just the mixes that I do, it's all the songs
Yeah.
that my students can work on. And that's what drove me to do this podcast, to do my own podcast, to do all the social media stuff that I have, because like, the more genuine connections and authentic connections I can make between producers and engineers and the artists that they work with, even as like tiny and insignificant as my impact may be, if that little puff of air just like
Pushes a
sets it over the
wing.
edge, if it's the like the little butterfly wing, like
Yeah.
that's fucking it, man. That's it. That's success. It's an unmeasurable success, which makes it very hard to define. But I think now that I've been able to understand that and realize that that was really the driving force behind everything that I did, that I just wasn't fully consciously aware of it. Now that I am conscious of it, that enables me to just like really go for it, because
Mm.
I know why I'm doing it. I understand why I want to do the things that I do.
Yeah, that's so great that you're also able to articulate that. And I also super resonate with that as like a bass player on stage. Whenever I get a chance to be a bass player on stage, I'm just like trying to like get people's butts shaken, you know? That's probably a big part of what I'm doing in the studio also. I haven't thought about it that deeply, but just getting to have, my sonic sensibilities hopefully help more people enjoy art is just like so gratifying. The same way that me playing bass on stage, getting people to, shake their tush a little more is also deeply gratifying for me. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I love that. And also, I wanted to touch on, this has nothing to do with success, or maybe it does. I don't know if it has to do with defining success, but I think there's like every person at some point has to do the numbers game to get to the quality game. And I think a lot of people go through a period of just like as much as possible. I remember interviewing DK Waddell from the Mixing Music podcast, and he said like he like mixed a song every day for an entire year, and he was so burnt out, but he also got really good at mixing when he did that. He was like, this
Yeah.
is like terrible on like every aspect of like my life, except that now I'm a really good mixer. And you know what I mean? Now I've put in those reps and those hours. And so I think everybody at some point in your life, you're going to do that, like, the dirty work and just like go hard. But that'll hopefully give you the tools you need for further down in your career when you need more space for, say, your family or just, your aging body,
Yeah. And
etc.
to continue on this little side path, I think I feel very lucky that my first year of like really mixing a crap load of songs was 2020, because of the fact that I had to mix a lot of poorly recorded like home studio vocals.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna, I feel like if I did, 300 318 whatever, I forget what the number was, like 318 songs that year where everything was recorded well in a studio, I would not be nearly as good or as confident as I am now, because all of the hard stuff would have been kind of done before I got my hands on it. And I feel like that the resistance training
Yeah.
of, it's like sprinting with ankle weights, when you have to deal with, songs that all the elite, the verses were recorded on an SM7, but then they broke it, so they did the choruses on like their USB mic or something, or like whatever weird stuff that gets thrown at you. Like when you just tackle it head on and put those reps in, it's it's magical.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
When I was at some point in my journey, I sort of decided my niche is going to be, I'm going to be the mobile recording guy, and I built like a big box and had a laptop, and I was going to take it to different places to record people, and I did that, and it was terrible for my back, but it was really great to get a bunch of recordings in different kinds of spaces that were not necessarily ideal, because it really taught me about finding resonant frequencies, how to make something sound good, even if there are some things in it that are bad. I think it just like gave me a whole tool set of dealing with crappy audio that I'm using every day in my life.
And I think what's interesting too is that at the time you probably did not think that it was going to have an effect on
Yeah.
the future, in the sense that now you have a podcast production business, and I'm sure not everything that you're sent is recorded well in a great
Post
room.
production business.
Post production, yeah, yeah. So that's the thing, yeah. So you have a lot of practice problem solving, and
Yes.
I'm sure you came into doing this much more. I don't want to say like quickly and easily, because it's still going to be a pain in the ass a lot of times. But I feel like you came into it much more prepared with better problem solving skills, even though
Yeah.
it seems kind of unrelated, or it sure wasn't the plan.
Right. Yeah. Sure wasn't the plan, but yeah, we did it.
Yeah.
Good job.
So what does success look like right now for you? I don't think we
What?
got to that.
Oh, yeah. Well, you sort of, I guess you kind of answered the question, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say, okay, great. So what does success look like for me? So I think success for me is working on music that I find meaningful, not working on things that I don't resonate with. So a lot more yes and a lot more no also at the same time. And and hopefully earning enough to sustain my family, and at this point, like, only doing music is not what's happening, because I do also have this post-production business, but it's enabled me to sort of be a lot pickier about what I choose to work on with music, because now I have less time, but I have to make it count a bit more. And yeah, so I've never been happier with the productions I'm working on now. And I think for me, success is for this stage of my life is going to continue to be sort of that whittle down of like just hopefully working on better projects that I resonate with more, and I'm the right fit for, less of things that I don't really resonate with, or don't need to take on, and just kind of hopefully earning enough to support my family. That's kind of where I'm at. And you know uh, to touch on like the music city thing, which I feel like we should touch on, like why are neither of us in Nashville or LA or whatever, and it's just because I have other priorities also, you know what I mean? And like if my only priority was success in the music business, in terms of like just working on, like, I don't know, whether it's label projects or bigger artists, whatever it is, bigger budgets, then LA's probably where you want to be for that stuff, but that would entail a lot of things that I don't want to do, such as moving my family to LA, moving further away from the rest of my family, my extended family, my wife's extended family. Um, you know, living what I would probably say is a less how do I say this nicely? Like, I don't know. I feel like LA is like a little bit more of a plasticky sort of a vibe, whereas things here are very real and grounded and feel like, I don't know, grounded to the earth. People are very real, and at least in my neighborhood, in my community here in Israel. So those are things that I are also important and priorities to me as well. So for me, success is still having all those things, still having my family and my wife's family nearby, while working on as much meaningful music as possible simultaneously. So I guess that would sort of be my definition of success. How about you?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, well, I'll say what I think is really amazing about the fact that we are doing what we do when we're doing it is the fact that it's 2024 and foundational necessity of living in a big music city is just not what it was.
Right.
Is it easier? Probably in some respects. Is it easier to meet people and be in person with people? Yeah, of course. But when the cost of living is, I don't know, 3 or 4 times more than what it is here where I am, it gives me flexibility in other ways. And if I wanted to do what I'm doing now 20 years ago, it just would not have been a thing, right? Like I could not have been a remote mixing engineer in
No,
2004, right? That's
no,
not, yeah, that
definitely
could
not
not
in
have,
Pennsylvania.
yeah, in Amish country, like, yeah, I always say, man, it's so fun that I am so, you know, digitally connected to the artists that I work with, and I'm very fascinated by artificial intelligence and like use it every day. But yet I literally live in Amish country. So it's like I have to, go around horse and buggies while I'm listening to podcasts about,
AI.
whatever AI and stuff. Yeah, I love it. I love the juxtaposition. And,
Do you
and I
feel like
think
it? Do you feel like it keeps you grounded?
yeah, and I think especially because I live in the Amish area, that the change does not happen, right? So even though when I was a little kid, we'd go camping out in this area and things just haven't changed, So I think it does keep me grounded in the sense that it's not just that, you know, my job is taking me faster into, progression and the future, faster than the area around me. It's like, oh no, like there a lot of this area is very firmly stuck in, I don't know, 1800s, I guess, Um, so I love that juxtaposition, that dichotomy, it's fascinating to me, and I do think it keeps me grounded, and that's something that I love. I get way too anxious when I'm in New York. I get way too anxious when I'm in LA. I I maybe could survive in a music city if I didn't have other things that I love, but it seems like I I kind of have the best of both worlds. I'm kind of having my cake and eating it too.
Amazing. Well, I'm glad to hear that on your behalf.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, I feel like if I was, starting over and I was 23 again or 24 and at 23 and 24 I didn't have the brain that I have now, and I haven't gone through the experiences that I have now, but and I couldn't have done anything any differently looking back on my journey. But if I was a 36-year-old Ben brain and a 23-year-old Ben body, then maybe I would have spent some time either in LA or somewhere else to sort of try to like make connections and build myself up while I was young. So I don't necessarily think that going to a music city is a bad idea. But at this stage in my life, with the responsibilities I've taken upon myself and the community that I'm a part of and the people that I want to be a part of, it's just that's not what I would, for me, that would no longer be successful. But maybe
Yeah.
23-year-old Ben looking back, it could have been a good idea, but it didn't happen. So what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, and it wouldn't have led you to where you are now.
Right. And also like, are we happy with what we're doing? Like, I think we're both happy with the work we're doing, the lives we're living, and, doing all number one, label work, I don't think would make me happier. It would probably make me more anxious.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we as humans, and I think especially we as creatives, we can either be really great at adapting to the situations that we're in and making the most of it, or we can be really, really terrible at it. And I feel like I'm very thankful that both you and I are pretty good at it.
All
And I
right.
think, right? Do you agree with that?
I think I'm okay.
Yeah. And or at
You're
least,
good at it. You're good.
at least I'm trying, and at least you're trying.
Yeah. And I guess we're both trying to make the best of our lives, and we're both happy with the lot we were dealt. So I guess
Yeah.
that's a big part of success also, you know?
Well, do you think that's maybe why our vision of success changes?
What do you mean?
Like as our own lives and priorities and passions change,
Mhm.
so too will the definitions of success that we have, right? But
Yes.
do you think that if we weren't as flexible with the situations that we get into and how we do things, like if we were like, oh no, this is the one way things have to be, do you think that we would still have the same success definition that we had when we were in high
Yeah.
school or college? And would we be miserable and jaded, or would be, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this question. I guess it's just
Yeah.
more of
No,
a
no.
rhetorical, existential kind of thing.
No, I love it. Yeah, I mean, I think if we had different goals, maybe when we were younger, then we might have gone in a different direction and would have chosen a different definition of success. So maybe it's a chicken or egg situation because of whatever goals we had at the beginning of our careers led us down these paths
Yeah.
to be where we are now. And we want to be happy with the lot we were given and the lives we're living. So we choose but at the same time we constantly are adapting and we're constantly refining. And so yeah, I don't know. I think we would probably have different definitions of success if we had gone a more, balls to the wall, let's go to LA and just like work all the time sort of mentality when we were in our 20s. Uh, but maybe we would realize, oh, I should have been more judicious. I don't, I have no idea.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think
There's no way to know, right?
yeah. Well, I think that, I feel like this is kind of related, but I feel like the only difference between being determined and being stubborn is just whether or not it works out in your favor.
Mm,
You know? So like if you went to LA when you're 23 and you just like were like going for it, you're like going to do this. If it ended up working out, damn, Ben was determined. You know? But if you went there and it wasn't working and you weren't happy and you refused to adapt and kept going after this, you know, air quotes dream that you had, even if it wasn't working and even if it was working but it wasn't making you happy, then you just be stubborn Ben, you know, refusing to change.
yeah.
And I'd rather be, you know, adaptable, happy Carl, you know, happy with, you know, not just where I'm at, but where I'm going, and the finding joy in not knowing where we're going to end up, finding joy in not knowing, you know, basically it's like, you know, knowing we're never going to be successful in the sense, you know what I mean? Like in the sense that it's always going to change, you know, like as soon as we get there, it's going to, we're going to change our sight.
There's always another mountaintop once you get to
There's
one peak.
always. And I think that's why, you know, defining success is kind of a goofy thing to do in the first place.
Mm.
Even though I know we just spent this entire episode talking about it. But I mean, like, defining it or like defining success and believing that it is a finite goal.
Yeah.
That's dangerous. And I feel like a lot of people,
It's a
especially in
limiting
the music
belief.
industry, yeah, I think a lot of people in the industry or that want to be in the industry kind of have that sense, and they have an idea of what it's going to mean to be a successful producer, to be a successful engineer, a successful session player. Um, but a lot of times it leads to disappointment or a total change in what you actually perceive that to be.
Yeah. If we're looking to the future, I guess that would be like the last stage in our journeys of success or defining success. Do you foresee any changes in the future for you of like how you may define success, or you might
Oh
have,
yeah.
or yeah.
Oh,
W-
totally. Yeah, I do feel like I tend to adapt what success means to me like every day. Like every day it's a little bit different. But I think it's because it's always the horizon, right? We're never going to get closer to it. We're always going to be the same distance from the horizon. The horizon itself just changes shape.
Right. Yeah.
So I find joy in that. I don't know. I find comfort in that. in a weird way. Uh, and I find a lot of excitement in that. I love and I'm thankful for how many weird twists and turns and unexpected things happened so far to me in my life. Some great, some not so great, but I I look forward to the surprises around the corner, and I think because of that, maybe if I had to pick one definition of success that I had to stick with, it would just be the constant movement toward a newfound perspective of what being happy means.
Yeah. Love that.
Yeah, that almost sounded smart.
No, it was good. I feel the same way. I feel like we don't know where this journey is going to take us from here on out.
Yeah.
In a year from now, we might be in completely different worlds. You know what I mean? But hopefully, if we're open minded and and we're excited about potential prospects that who knows what will happen, we'll be able to embrace those changes and hopefully try to be happier or do things that help us stay happy, because I think happiness is at the end of the day the goal. And music makes me happy, so that's why I keep doing music. And helping other people make music, it makes me happy, so I keep helping other people make music. And having a little bit of a work-life balance and having time with my kids makes me happy, so I keep doing that also. So I feel like those kind of ground rules are going to continue to affect our choices of what we do, what we don't do, and how we define that success for ourselves, I guess, to put a ribbon on it. I don't know. I think we're on very similar pages, me and you and Carl.
Yeah, I think so too. And I'd say the only thing you forgot to mention is how happy it makes you to see me when we
Oh,
record these episodes.
that's part. I mean, that's part of it, and that's one of you know what, and that's one of the twists that like I did not see me having a co-host for the show a year ago, and then I got to a point where it's like I'm not gonna be able to do this show if I don't have a co-host, and then I get to do it with you, and that gives me joy, and that also
Aw.
opens up so many possibilities of where the show might go, and that's really exciting, and I'm super pumped and excited about all of that stuff. So, yay!
Yay. Well, thank you kindly for taking the bait on that one.
Pleasure. Bye, Carl.